2, 3. You ready?
Wow. Sucks. Wow. Sucks. Wow.
1, 2, 3. Yep.
Sax-A-Boom. Sax-A-Boom. Sax-A-Boom.
1, 2, 3. You ready?
Wow. Sucks. Wow.
Yamato, one of the most iconic battleships, I think, ever. Even if somebody is not really interested in history of the Navy, he probably heard the name at least once. In World of Warships, this ship is iconic. And I think everyone should know at least the baseline on how it should be played. So in this video I'm gonna tell you about the properties of Yamato, how to exploit them the most efficiently, and generally share some tips and tricks on how to deal with enemies while playing it. First, let's get a quick overview of what we have. Yamato is equipped with the biggest guns in the game.
Well, actually,
Okay, Yamato is equipped with the biggest Tech 3 guns for tier 10, 460mm to be exact. This ship also has amazing armor and huge amount of hit points, exceeding 100,000 if you run the new added flag. However, there are some disadvantages of. However, Yamato has couple weaknesses. Apart from the common trait it shares with most IGN ships, which is lack of AA, Yamato's size also dictates on how much you can maneuver, which is very little. The overall great armor of Yamato also has a couple of weak spots. I'm gonna be talking soon. So let's talk about how to exploit our strengths, then how to avoid being exposed by our weaknesses. First most noticeable strength is our main battery's caliber. 460mm allows us to overmatch up to 32mm of armor, meaning that we can ignore angling of everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Not everyone everywhere all the time, but we all know that ships do not really possess great armors on the nose. Actually, even battleships have 32mm there most of the time, meaning that we can just shoot through it. Except for the fact that some of the ships possess icebreakers on the nose, which is basically extensions of the belt armor that is usually around 40mm thick, which basically conducts to us having to shoot above it, because it's not the whole length of the nose, it's just the bottom part. On the afts, however, very often there is no extra protection. Ability to do this, paired with general great accuracy of our ship, allows us to punish those that do not know about it. Such as this main. He starts up with very high pool of HP. However, I was already prepared on dueling him, so I knew exactly where I'm supposed to shoot, which is 32mm on his nose. So even though I had very little HP, I managed to almost kill him. Unfortunately, he managed to land the last salvo on my superstructure, which basically finished me off. So if you can do something like that to a battleship, imagine what you can do to a cruiser. Oh, you probably saw the intro, right? Another of our advantages is our armor, meaning that we can withstand a lot of heat coming our way. However, to use our armor properly, we don't really need to angle as much as we need to stay at correct distances. Like in this match, I've been left with my DD and Schlieffen on this flank because both of our cruisers decided to go on a little vacation to the opposite flank for some reason. So instead of me running away and being in kiting position, I wanted to use my amazing durability to the advantage and try to hold the flank. By that, I needed to stay at long to medium range from the opponent, basically negating most of their strengths and the biggest weakness of our armor, which is something people call the hentai cheek. Because on close ranges, under the first and second turret, if we get hit, our citadel basically makes our ship explode. Similar thing happens if we're being shot at from the back at our doors under the last turret. Mid to long range makes it unable for many opponents to actually hit that part, or when they do not retain enough pen to actually citadel us. Yamato also has very powerful 56% torpedo protection, meaning that I could live through stuff like this and trade the DD, which actually won us back the initiative on this flank. You probably also noticed that Yamato doesn't really have a lot of consumables, but Emperor equipped us with our heal, DCP, and spotter plane that we can exchange for fighter if we have the will to. And we don't need anything more. How dare you assume Emperor made a mistake? Okay, knowing how to exploit our strengths, we also need to counter our weaknesses. The most visible one is, of course, our lack of AA. So how to deal with that? Very similar to how to deal with our weak spot and general tanking with this ship. We need to position ourselves correctly and on correct range, which is long to medium. With that positioning, enemy CV, even though he really likes us as a target, will have to make sure that he accounts the amount of time spent to give to us for the reward he gets. Dropping us is not really the hardest part. Second of all, if we position ourselves correctly, we also should have cover of AA from our cruisers, or at least a line that enemy CV will have to cross to get to us. What do I mean by that is, so when enemy CV wants to drop us, he needs to come from correct angle towards us, like torpedo planes want to come from the side, the dive bombers want to come from the front. Meaning that depending on what squadron we see approaching, and we're gonna see it approaching, don't even tell me that you cannot see planes, they have 10-kilometer detection, come on. You're gonna see it. You're gonna have time to prepare yourself. You want to position yourself so that the correct angle of approach of the planes should always be covered by your allies. It doesn't really need to be strong AA ship. It just needs to be one that is gonna open up its AA on top of those planes. That would discourage enemy CV from dropping you, maybe they will switch targets, or at least make them bleed out more planes, which may result in, actually will on game, because enemy CV will focus something he won't kill for at least 15 minutes, while your CV can make moves in that part. which basically comes down to trading. Tell you how to build your ship. Well, let's combine all the strategies I was talking about into one simple plan of the game. At the start of the match, you want to position yourself basically where you did spawn, without moving too much. You want to either turn outside if you're on the flank, so that you basically are on the outer edge of your flank, or if you're spawned in the middle, you pick one of the weaker flanks and you try to move towards there, but stay generally in the middle to provide for crossfires to help your team deal with enemies on the sides. In the mid game, you want to try make somewhat of an initiative and either be defensive on the flank if the flank is losing, or try to make somewhat of a push. You don't want to be a front leader of an attack, you want to support your allies because of how slow you are, but your ship is huge intimidation factor and you need to play around that. In late game is where you want to commit the most, since this is where the game is gonna be decided. If you're losing, you want to push in. In fact, Yamato can brawl, it's just very difficult to do, and in the late game when there is very little opponents to crossfire you and get to your citadel, this task is much easier. Throughout the whole game, you need to keep a keen eye on positioning of enemy DDs, as being torpedoed is a very quick way of getting to port, as well as showing too much of broadside. Even though your armor is very good, it still leaves room for ships like Vermont to easily make you explode in a big ball of flame. Now, with all the strategies and things being said, I want to give you a build that would fit them the most and generally make you much more effective at using those. First, for the upgrades, I recommend going for the standard things. You want to reduce the fire and flood duration, as well as generally improving basic characteristics of your ship, such as dispersion. Improving your concealment is also very important. In the last slot, you either want to go for the main battery reload or the legendary module for Yamato. Even though 7% less dispersion seems like nothing special, it actually is a very significant increase that you 100% gonna notice in game. For captain build, well, it's the same golden standard. Some people say that running the 3-point per heal cooldown reduction based on potential damage is better. However, for Yamato specifically, I would disagree, since Yamato usually takes a lot of damage from fires due to being on longer distances and doesn't stack that much potential damage to make a great use of this perk. Because usually when you actually get a lot of potential damage, to make this perk give you more value than the fire reduction one, is all at once, which basically defeats the whole point of it. Okay, so now you know how Yamato is played, how to use its strengths to the best, and of course how to build your captain and use your modules. It's been Senpai Silent here. See you next time.